Hey, welcome back everyone. So I am moving ahead with the assembly process on the Radio Shack Realistic MC-1800 Mini Mach One that I'm putting together. And I've already done the cutouts. I've got a horn to go in it. I've got the driver to go in it. I've got the brace to go in it. I've got the binding post. I've got the crossover. Got everything ready to go. So basically, I call it all downhill from here. We'll see if it actually is. But I think that this is a project that should go pretty smooth, and I'm looking really forward to listening to them and seeing what they sound like. I think that they're going to be fun. So in a minute, I'm going to lay out all my stuff for it and show you what I've got going on, and then dive into the assembly, okay? All right, I think I'm all set up. I've got pretty much everything I could think of here. I've got my Dayton MB820-8 Pro mid-bass driver. Got my tweeter, Mach 1 lookalike speaker. I've got brand new terminal cups with 5-way binding posts. I've got my bass reflex ports. I've got my cool little crossovers. I've got the wire I need. I've got this is pure copper 16 gauge, and I've got 2-wire that'll feed the crossover. And then I've got a 4-wire cord that'll feed the woofer and the mid-range. Let's see what else I got. Tools, obviously. Hot glue, it's a must. I've got my crimper, my terminal ends, I've got wire cutters, drill, screwdriver, pretty much what I need right now. I still got to grab some glue and what else? A couple other things, but at any rate, I'm going to go ahead and get set up and get started. Okay, so I'm gonna take a time out here because this is kind of a more delicate operation. I want to show you what I'm doing. Basically, this driver, it looks fine, but it does have that cork gasket on it for mounting from behind the baffle. And I did buy these kind of like rubber gasket / trim rings. Found them on eBay. There's a seller there that has them in all different sizes, and they're really cool. Except on the inside, and I don't know if you can see that or not, but on the inside, it's designed to fit around the frame of the speaker and then kind of press down on the glued area of the surround. So it's essentially doing kind of the same thing as this gasket, except we need to remove this gasket to get this to fit properly. So that's kind of a more delicate operation, but I figured I'd go ahead and show you what I'm doing and tell you why I'm doing it. So let's see how this goes. show you what I have going on so far. This speaker is just for show right now. I just wanted to put the drivers in there and see what it looked like. This cabinet, I still need to put the sileless sound deadener on it, put the brace in there, basically everything, the port, everything that I did on that speaker. And to show you the inside of this speaker, just to kind of gauge where we're at. But this is what I have going on. So I've got the entire cabinet lined with sileless. So the majority of the front baffle, all of the sides, the entire back, top, bottom. And I also did the port. Now this is something I was playing around with last night, the foam over the port. Because it is a rear facing port, oftentimes you do need to put some foam in there, a port bung of some kind, to try to eliminate a lot of that, you know, boominess coming from behind it. The other thing, and it's just a personal preference, inside of here, so if you look through that port, you can see the sileless sound deadener, and with the foam in there, it closes it off really nice. The other side effect to using the foam in a port is, well, there's pros and cons to it. So from my experience, and I don't know the physics behind it, I don't know what the Loudspeaker cookbook says about it or anything like that. This is just from my own personal experience. But I have found that if a cabinet is just a little too small for a driver, which this one is, but it's still vented. But that driver is, it would need a much smaller sealed enclosure. Like in this case, the driver I'm putting in here, it calls for a 0.3 cubic foot sealed cabinet, if I remember right, and a 0.71 cabinet if it's vented. Well, I'm kind of hitting it right in the middle, because this is 0.53 cubic foot, probably with the, you know, sileless and the port and stuff, figure half a cubic foot. So basically it's just a little too small and it's too big at the same time. So with the foam, I'm going to try to create kind of a hybrid of sorts. So it's still going to breathe through the port. It's still going to make noise through the port. But it's not going to be as noisy as if that port was open. And it's not going to react the same as it would if that port was wide open. But it still will be a bass reflex system. Still let sound out the back. And like I said, a big reason for that, my primary reason is for aesthetics, but I think it'll probably work out for the performance as well. If it doesn't, if it causes a problem, I'll just take it out. But in my experience putting it in other speakers, I found that what it does is it creates, how can I put it? It's a little more solid bass, if that makes sense. There's less kind of boominess to it. It's more of a solid, punchy bass. And I found that plugging the port completely, that can sometimes create a similar effect where it's got a lot of deep bass, because you're essentially putting a driver, in that case, a driver that was designed for a much larger vented enclosure, now all of a sudden finds itself in a sealed enclosure that's way beyond what it was supposed to be used in. So that can create a lot of kind of low, deep bass, but it kills the mid bass. In an arrangement like this, what I found is that the mid bass is still perfect. And really the only thing it affects is the way that the bass sounds between clean and boomy. So if that makes any sense at all, I hope it does. All right, let's get back to working. Hey, you know, I figured as long as we're here, I'll show you kind of the concept behind this Silas sound deadening. And there's a lot of different companies that make it, Dynomat, Boom Mat, etc. But the concept is always the same. It's essentially like a butyl rubber on the back that's really gooey and messy and super sticky. And then on the other side, it's foil that's primarily there to hold this in place into this shape, but it also reflects sound. So this is sound deadener. Okay, this prevents sound from emanating from the inside of the cabinet out. It also adds an anti-resonance ability by adding mass, because this stuff is heavy. When this cabinet is loaded up with this stuff, it's pretty heavy. And to kind of show you what the sound difference is like, okay, that's the side with it or without it. You don't hear much difference probably in the camera, but once this thing is fully lined, you can really hear the difference between like sound deadener and an anti-resonance that's adding mass to the actual material, the MDF itself, versus dampening. And they're both technically dampening, but dampening, things like fiberglass, polyfill, foam, those are designed to absorb sound waves. Now they don't stop resonance though. They're not going to, they can slow down the sound waves from reaching the surface, but they don't do anything to prevent resonance, which is when this panel, you know, hits a resonant frequency that makes it kind of sing. And so that's, you know, the combination of sound deadener and a dampening material, like the fiberglass that I'm going to be putting back in here, that is serving two purposes. So it's breaking up standing bass waves, it's slowing down the sound from hitting the cabinet, from, you know, it's slowing down the sound waves, kind of filtering, if you will. It's through some kind of a thermal process that operates on really low heat, but basically it does absorb a lot of that energy. And then this is going to be actually stopping it from hitting the cabinet, and this is dampening the cabinet to lower, you know, to make that resonance less. So I just wanted to stop the video, kind of explain to you how this stuff works. It's probably kind of confusing, probably needs a video all on its own, but as long as I'm going to the trouble of lining this whole cabinet, I wanted to at least explain why. And in this case, it's really important because this is a 8-inch two-way, and that 8-inch woofer, 8-inch bass driver is going to be reaching up way high. It's going to be going 3,000, 4,000 hertz. It's actually it's a mid bass driver. And so, you know, the crossover point is like 3,500, but that woofer is still going to be operational, you know, beyond that. All right, so you're right here with me. Cabinet's plugged in, and I've got the exciter hooked up. Let's play some music. So there you go. So it's at a pretty loud volume, and you can definitely hear it coming out of the back panel because that thing's attached to the back panel. It's howling pretty good. Now we're getting to the point where we would be rolling off the woofer. Okay, we'll stop it there. That being said, I found from my previous experiments with the RCA cabinet is that around 400 hertz is when the cabinet started to sing. All right, so this is at minus 10 dB. And so, you know, with the sound deadener in it, it did dampen that noise tremendously. But without it, I mean, you know, there was a lot of sound coming out of the cabinet. So from 400 hertz on up, and it just gets louder as it goes. So that's a big important reason to put it in an 8-inch cabinet like this. It's going to be crossing over higher, is because the chance of it resonating are much greater than, say, in a 15-inch 3. Even a 12-inch, unless you're crossing it over low, like I'm crossing my 12 inches over at what is it, roughly 800 hertz, say 600 to 800 hertz. But like I say, it starts resonating at 400. As far as you know, a 15-inch, you could probably cross that over lower and eliminate a lot of that chance. But the smaller that the driver is, the higher you're making it work in the frequency range. So the more apt it is to make the cabinet resonate. That being said, just as a kind of a thought running through my head, it's probably way more important to kill the resonance on a small speaker versus, say, a large speaker. So just a thought running through my head. Anyway, I'm going to get back to work.